General Weygand has called the Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
Welcome to the Lead Pursuit Podcast, a podcast covering Blood Red Skies, a game of World War II aerial combat. Good evening and welcome to episode 4 of the Lead Pursuit Podcast. Tonight I'm joined by my good friends Brett and Chris, and we're going to talk about Beyond the Box Set. We're going to talk about all those things you may not have thought about when you first went out, bought your box set, and maybe even played your first couple games, painted up some miniatures. But there are things you're going to realize pretty soon that you probably want to add to your arsenal. Hey, Chris. Hey, Brett. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing great, man.
Great.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. So let's talk about a couple of these things, because I know we started off sharing a box set, and, well, that was a recipe for disaster. And I think between us, we've bought at least 4 box sets that I know of. Chris can't seem to stop buying them and giving them away. So, hey, everybody, become friends with Chris. He'll buy you a box set.
Hey, he's my son.
All right. So I guess that's a legitimate person to buy a box set for. But there's a lot of things that all of a sudden you play either against other players around your city or around the tournament scene. You start realizing there's a lot of other gear that people have, and there's things you may not have thought of when you plunk down the money you bought your box set. And there are things you probably ought to buy before you buy more airplanes. Now, I realize that is heresy, and I realize that none of us on this podcast followed that advice. Well, except maybe Brett. I think Brett spent as much money on additional stuff as he did on airplanes, but I know both Chris and I kept buying box after box of airplanes before we bought the rest of the gear for the game. So one of the things I really wanted to talk about was gaming mats, because unfortunately, if you go out there, there are more options than most people know what to do with for gaming mats. Brett, you're kind of our mat guru. So I know Chris and I have both picked some up, but Brett, you've spent a lot of money on gaming mats, and thank you, because they were awesome to have a choice of 3 to 4 different mats the last time we played down in Jacksonville. But tell us what you found out there.
It was important to me to get a mat or something, to establish the narrative, right? It has to look good. The planes look awesome, but they look kind of dorky just on a pool table or something, right? So pretty much right when we got back from Adepticon, I was hunting the internet for aerial mats that were the appropriate scale. And I found a few websites that have a lot of variety. And one in particular, it's tinywargames.co.uk. They have the most diverse selection of mats that would work in this scale. I've seen onesies and twosies in other places, but these guys have tons, and it's surprising the amount of stuff they have. And I think they have the capacity to even do custom things. I mean, I haven't done this myself, but I believe if you look at their website, they may have the capacity to take a photograph or a map or something that you give them and turn that into a big mat for you. We got 3 mats from them, and they're all really nice.
This is something I really don't need to hear, being a Russian wargamer, because now I'm thinking about, let's order a bunch of custom gaming mats.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you could save yourself some money and just borrow Brett's Stalingrad one, which is the World War I looking map that has fortifications, burnout cities, and everything else on it.
That was a pretty cool map. That was fun.
That was a fun map.
Yeah, that was kind of, so I got 3 mats to start with, right? Because we have Pacific theater stuff. So I got a Pacific Sea mat, which is nothing more than a big blue ocean with some white caps on it, but it looks great. Scale is perfect. I got another, a Battle of Britain map, right? Which has a bunch of the channel and then a sliver of the maybe Dover coast or Kent or whatever. It's clearly, coastal.
Yeah, I found that
England.
mat online too with them, and they actually print that mat the long way also.
Right.
So you can get that mat where it's half the mat on the long side, the 6-foot side is the coastline. So you've got less blue, and I think that's the one I'm going to order for having up here. It's definitely going to be one of my starter mats.
I bet that looks really nice. The other mat I got was that one we just talked about, which I think when you look really closely at it, I would guess maybe it's World War I, but the scale is good. And really at the tabletop level, it really looks like it could be Defense of the Reich, maybe Eastern Front. It's got the colors look right for, just kind of a dismal kind of terrain. I don't know how else to describe it, but
no, it does look like the Eastern Front. It looks like, the German army marching across the tundra, headed, trying to take Stalingrad and Moscow, and the perfect thing for flying German versus Russian games over.
Yeah, and it was great because it already had the crater markers. So when Lydia got shot down and became a smoking hole, it was right there already on the map, right, Chris?
It was one game, dude. One game. you just loving you shot down Lydia. Trust me.
I do. I enjoyed taking your ace out right at the beginning of the
game.
game.
When you put your pretty British airplanes on the board, which you didn't do with me, there'll be some retribution.
Excellent.
Sorry, Brett. We're going to play Russians versus. Actually, we're just going to have to do alternate history. So I can
we'll just write alternate history. We could figure this out.
There you go.
That mat we keep talking about as being like an Eastern Front mat came from a place called Deep Cut Studios, also in the UK. I think if you Google search, you can find it. But the other two mats I got came from Tiny War Games, and they have a US distributor as well. I didn't realize that when I ordered my first mat, but all the mats you see there, apparently you can get if you're in the US from a US distributor. And really, I was emailing back and forth, both the guy from the US distributor and the guys in England, and they were all super cool. And the mat selection is just amazing. I mean, they have just mats that you can get that are already in their catalog are things like Pearl Harbor, Malta. There's just a ton of them. It's pretty amazing. And
one of the things we really need to talk about is the materials, because I purposely ordered some cheaper ones off Amazon because I was going to cut them up for backgrounds rather than actually use them as gaming mats. But tell me about the material of those mats.
Ones I ordered were, for all three, they were mouse pad mats. But you don't have to get them that way. You can get them in thinner material. I think on the Tiny War Game site, they advertise a material that is machine washable. I think they have a photograph on their gallery that shows several of their mats hanging up on a clothesline in someone's backyard or something. So, that's, and they're a little less expensive. I opted for the mouse pad material, even though it's more expensive. Just because I like
I think the difference is only like €15 when I was looking at the website. And I can tell you the difference between a mouse pad mat and a cloth mat for €15. I think I'm spending the €15. The mouse pad mats. I mean, my 30K mouse pad mats have been everywhere. I drag them everywhere and they roll out and they look the same way every time. And I've seen some of the cloth and PVC mats, and they don't take the wear that the mouse pad mats do. And I guess
there's another
issue. A little difference too, because you're not throwing terrain down on the mat constantly like you are with other games. But still, I love the mouse pad material.
Well, that is the one advantage. If you really want to be cheap and you go for the vinyl PVC style ones, there's just a couple things you got to realize is they are going to tear up faster between rolling them up, whatever creases you accidentally get in it. Thankfully, like Chris said, we're not throwing terrain on top of it. But the other part that maybe no one else will care about, except for those of us that are, running a podcast, putting photos on Facebook, but those glossy maps don't take photos real well. They just always glare on them. So if you're the kind of person that wants to throw armies out on the table, take some cool photos, stay away from the vinyl ones. The mouse pad mats are awesome. They look beautiful. And they have a nice matte finish to them. So that way they don't pick up the overhead lighting glare.
Yep. Double photographer approved.
They're not going to bunch up on you, stuff like that. We were all on the tables all night long for a couple nights with those things, and they didn't bunch up. You could put your drink on it, whatever. It's kind of nice, and awesome. Rolling dice on it's quiet. It's a good material.
Okay, well that's awesome. That's a lot of good gouge for everybody out there who's listening, who's saying, well, how much should I invest? And I guess my thought always is, especially for a game like Blood Red Skies, invest in at least one really good one. You don't have to go overboard like we did, but at least invest in one good one.
I think I'm going to go with that farmland mat, because that basic farmland mat that I think they sell that one at Tiny War Games. It could be anywhere. I mean, It just looks like farmland, and it's
Korea.
It's kind of like, it could be anywhere. It could be anywhere, and it's a great mat. And I think if people were looking for starter mats, that mat and probably one of the English Channel mats are definitely a way to go. Because even though it's the Dover, it doesn't have the white cliffs on it. I mean, there's a tiny white line, but who says that couldn't be the Crimea? or
which is
somewhere
exactly where it was perfect for shooting down Lend-Lease Wildcats. Sorry, I'm gloating about a second game. No, I think those are some good points to think about. And once again, there's so many options out there. Find something. I would recommend pick the high quality one first, and then if you find there's a lot of other things you want to do, and you don't have the money, then maybe go cheap on the alternate battlefields. But along those lines, one of the big questions is, not just what do you play on, but how do you get your miniatures there, especially if you've gotten beyond the box set and now you've maybe bought another box of airplanes and painted them up, and you don't want to get them beat up just throwing them in a plastic bag and putting them inside your box set. Not that Chris did that or anyone else I know. But if you really want to take care of your miniatures, how do you do that? Because if you go out to Battle Foam, who I buy a lot of stuff from, and Chris, I know you've bought from them before. I swear by their stuff, but you can't type in Blood Red Skies and find any Battle Foam ready to go. They have some other airplane games that are in there, Wings of Glory and things like that, but they're not exactly the same style of airplanes, so they may not fit. But Chris, what do you use from Battle Foam for most of your?
I'm using a 1-inch thick large infantry tray, which I use for all of my 40 mil Mechanica models, and I'm finding that tray more than anything is the perfect tray for me. One, I've already got the carrier that fits it. I already own the tray, but all of my airplanes fit in that tray right now. The bombers are the only things that are a little bit iffy, but I've got a couple other larger trays. The good thing about Battle Foam too is Battle Foam will custom cut any one you want. I mean, they actually have an area where you can go in and you can download all the different possible shapes you could put on a piece of foam, and you can put all those different things down and you can send them that custom look. And it's only like $5 more to have them custom cut it. And they can do anything.
That's a whole rabbit hole you can end up going down.
Exactly. You can. And I've done it for some of my, very different sci-fi models that have really weird shapes to them, especially me being a Mechanicum player. It has helped because I do have some custom trays that fit all my stuff perfect. But if I was a starter Blood Red Skies player, and I was into other war games, I would look at the trays you already have, because you probably have some infantry trays for 28 mil models that will hold your airplanes just fine.
Absolutely. And it's kind of funny, the one that I've used, because Chris, you don't have any of the larger metal models, the slightly outsized Corsairs or Wildcats.
Not yet, no.
So they're a little bit larger than the Spitfires and the ME-109s. What I actually use is the 1.5-inch Dust 1947 infantry tray, because I had an extra one. It's a Battle Foam large size. And I had moved a lot of my infantry over to different Battle Foam trays. And so kind of when I found myself without a good way to carry my aircraft around, I used those, and the aircraft fit really well in there, kind of catty cornered. So there's not nice and below the level of the top of the foam. And the more importantly, the bases also fit. So you can put 2 or 3 bases to each one of those infantry spots. And it's a good way to carry a large number of airplanes in a Battle Foam large case, which obviously most everybody who uses it these days now has transitioned to the large cases. But I think it's a great way to do it. But there's a lot of thing that to be said for using stuff off the shelf. I mean, Brett, what have you got to carry your aircraft in?
I have a small GW case. So I don't know what it's called, but after GW, they had the standard pluck foam, or the little trays, like infantry trays, little rectangular cutouts in them. Some time after that, they came out with a new design for their cases where it's sort of a zigzag, almost like a waffle iron look to it. And it's just made to sort of accordion around whatever random shape model you put in there. Well, these pieces of foam are perfect for these airplanes. In fact, I have a small case that's slightly smaller than a briefcase, maybe a little larger than a pistol case, if you will. And I could probably fit my entire Blood Red Skies armies with all my factions and flight stands and stuff in there. And I've carried it before as a carry-on while flying, and it fits nicely under the seat in front of me, and it's easy to cruise around with. Yeah, and it would be fine for my airplane. So I'll tend to use that.
I think those were the Kill Team cases that came out specifically for carrying smaller model counts, so you didn't have to try to cram a whole army in there. And those, when I saw you use that up at Adepticon to pack all your miniatures out of there, that looked like it was a really good way to do that and have a small case. If you don't need to bring all 40 or 50 of your airplanes, which most times you don't. Most times you just need a couple select squadrons of airplanes. And it allows you to put the larger airframes in there and not have wings and props sticking out like Chris and I sometimes have.
You'd be surprised. That small case is 2 deep too, so it's got 2 trays in it, so you could get a bunch of planes in there.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the added bogos of playing Blood Red Skies is when I came down to visit you guys. I was coming 5 states away, but I packed up all of my Mechanicum stuff, and Blood Red Skies, all the stuff I already owned. It was like one box. I mean, I brought my entire Air Force down in 1 foot by 1 foot by 6 inch deep box. And yeah, I wasn't using foam yet. I did have them in plastic bags, separate plastic bags, but you can take so many of these models somewhere. It's just different than other games. I mean, when I move my Mechanicum army, it's a huge 1780 battle foam freaking XL case to move a typical 3,000 point force. But with Blood Red Skies, man, I can take almost my entire Air Force and run 5 or 6 different types of scenarios with different aircraft with a box that's tiny. I mean, that is one of the big benefits of this game.
Absolutely. Okay, well that kind of covers how we're going to get our miniatures to and from the game. But there's a lot of things that aren't really miniatures, and they're not cases. They're kind of all these add-ons that a couple of the different companies have put on out there, either as acrylic markers or other components. One of the ones that I've seen both used and abused a lot are the acrylic prop discs. I know you guys have been doing a lot of the research on that. I've only ordered some basic ones off Amazon, but you guys have gone out there and found a couple different ones out there. Brett, what did you come up with?
Like you, I saw the ones on Amazon, the Litgo 10 millimeter ones. I thought they were pretty cool when I first saw them. But when I got them and actually started putting them on the models, it just didn't seem like the scale was right. I thought the disc was maybe not the right size. And I just started looking around and I found some really nice prop discs from Aerodrome Accessories. They're a hobby accessories website that has a bunch of stuff for Wings of Glory, I think it is. They have models and other accessories for that game, but these acrylic prop discs are appropriate for Blood Red Skies as well. And I think other people in the hobby are using them as well. I've seen folks post on the Blood Red Skies Ready Room on Facebook showing them, and I think that might have been where I first saw them. But anyway, they have different sizes. I found 14 millimeter discs were probably the perfect size for most of the planes that we're flying. They also have different sizes and different prop counts. So, you can get 2-bladed prop, 3-bladed prop, 4-bladed prop in all the different sizes. And I'm waiting for, I think his name is Kevin at Aerodrome Accessories to crank out some more of the 3-blade props. And once I get those, I'll probably put those on most of my planes that I have built now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I ordered some of those too.
Yeah, what have you come up with?
I ordered some of those too. I don't plan on doing prop discs on any of my monoplanes. My single engine fighters. I like the look of not having anything on there. Of course, I haven't done Corsairs or some of those that are kind of built to have something on it, so I might change my opinion when I start building those types of aircraft. But I think the only place where I plan on using them, and I will use them, is on bombers. And the bombers, especially the ones that come, the small plastic models that you actually assemble like they're a miniature model, they all come with really teeny tiny props that break off in 5 seconds. So those are going to get cut off, and I'm going to put the prop discs on those. But like I said, I don't know if I'm going to do a whole lot of them on my monoplanes. I kind of like the look of them. It's a spinning prop. I don't see it kind of thing. The airplane's flying. It's not parked. So I think for everybody, it's different. And I think with the aesthetic I'm going for, I'm probably just going to use them on my bombers. But I do like the ones that Brett found. That guy is really quick too. He turned my stuff around in no time. I think he's on vacation right now. Is the only reason we haven't been able to get in touch with him. But he turns it around really quick. And if there's something he doesn't have, he'll make it. So.
It's funny you said that about bombers, that you really want to use those discs there, because I'm thinking the JU-52s would look awesome with the prop discs on them, even more than the fighters.
So yeah, and I plan on putting them on the 88. I plan on putting them on my Soviet TV bombers. I will use them on all of my multi-engine airplanes, maybe even on 110s. so they might look good. So, but the like I said, that single engine monoplanes, I like the kind of point. I just like the way it looks without the prop disc. I think
you can get away with that
away from the paint job
on some of the inline aircraft. But, on the radials, it to me looks goofy with this blunt nose out there with nothing out there.
And that might be part of it.
I'm
mainly
Wildcats
doing inline
really
airplanes,
in my opinion. Yeah.
I've done a little work on drilling those discs out so they can fit over the hub or whatever over the spinner, so they're properly placed. They come packaged with a small hole, and they're covered with a protective tape on both sides of the acrylic so it doesn't get scratched up or whatever. And the pre-drilled hole is too small to fit over the spinner if you want to properly place it, where it, I'm trying to, it's great radio, right? I can't really draw a picture, but imagine where the prop actually is positioned on the spinner towards the cockpit on the, in front of the nacelle, engine nacelle. If the hole is too small and you're just sticking it on there, it's way forward, right? So you have to drill that hole out the right size to slide it over the spinner to the proper position the prop would be, or it just kind of looks a little wonky. And it could be a bit of a chore because it's thin acrylic. It's not an easy thing to drill. The method that I kind of messed around with it until I found something that worked. I just simply taped it onto a piece of wood that I could drill through onto on a workbench. I just put a scrap piece of wood down, put the acrylic disc that still had the protective tape on it, taped it down onto the board, and drilled down through it to expand the size of that center hole with the appropriate drill bit, and just worked small to large and kept testing it until I got the right fit. And when I found the bit that was the right size, and I could drill a few of those, and then they slide right on. And I cracked a couple of them in that process, but if you're careful, it can be done without too much trouble.
Yeah, and they're pretty cheap too. So buy extras.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Brett. I appreciate you for telling us how to nicely and smoothly widen the hole to fit it over the spinner. And I'll leave it at that.
Leave it to the Ranger to give the Marines a class on that
one. We won't go any further on that. As they say in other words, this is a podcast, right? Yeah, this is a Blood Red Skies podcast. That's what we're talking about. Okay. Well, there's a lot of other acrylic pieces, and once again, I'll go back to Litco, the company that made the original set of prop discs we looked at, the ones that I've used on my Spitfires and my RAF airplanes. They also have a lot of other stuff that at first you may say, well, why do I care about that? I mean, they've got some pretty cool markers for activation. They've got markers for high cover, markers for boom chits that are really cosmetic replacements. I mean, let's be honest. If you buy the box set in another squadron and maybe a squadron after that, all of a sudden you've got more boom chits, markers, and high cover markers than you know what to do with, right? I assume you guys are in the same spot.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, but do you like playing with the acrylic ones? Do they look a little bit better? And they seem to hold up better from what I've noticed.
Far sexier.
Like my Luftwaffe activation chits. Those are kind of cool.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that Chris
with a little hammer and sickles on them. So yeah, they're much cooler.
I just want to make sure that you did call small pieces of acrylic sexy.
So, hey, it's wargaming, man, and it's.
Chris may not get out much. How was it up in the UP? A little boring up there?
I was a little bored in the
UP. Awesome. Well, they also make a set of rulers and markers. A gun marker, a gun range marker. And personally, I like those. There's another set that's out there that's narrower. I know, Chris, you talked about ordering.
I'm going to grab one of those. It's on Etsy. I can't remember the name of the company, but I'm going to grab one of those.
Yeah, we'll have to try that out because even though the acrylic ruler is cool, the problem still is you get in this big fat finger issue of trying to move the acrylic ruler out of the way, not knock over too many airplanes. And so we'll try the smaller one.
The Etsy one looks like a reverse hourglass. So you basically set it to the side of the airplane, point it where you want it, and then you can move it along. So you're not actually on top of the ruler. Because that was one of the things I hated. It's like put the ruler down, move the airplane up to the number. Okay, hold the airplane in place, slide it out. And when you get in a fur ball where you've got like 5 airplanes around, that just gets difficult.
Yeah.
You're knocking over other people's airplanes.
Well, then, you're apologizing to everybody.
I like all these guys, and we're all drinking beer because if this was competitive 40K, I'd have some freaking neckbeard freaking crying right now that I bumped his model.
You knocked over my Thunderhawk. Thank goodness it's not plastic. It would have broken. All right. So now the 40K community hates me. Whatever. I don't care. So yeah. So we talked about the rulers a little bit and talked about a lot of these acrylic add-ons. And to be honest, there's a lot of different markers from different game systems you can use. We've talked about dice. I bought a set of the RAF dice just because, well, I was a dork and wanted something different.
And I just bought the Warlord dice, the Russian dice, for the Warlord games for the 28 mil game.
Right. So I saw their bolt action
like
dice.
The dice better than the ones they came up with for Blood Red Skies.
Yeah. So, well, their British Army Roundel one looks better than the RAF dice because I really don't care about this RAF crest. I'd rather have a UK Roundel on it. But whatever,
Yep.
Find some dice that make you feel happy and maybe make you feel a little bit lucky, so that you won't want to melt them down when you lose. Okay. So there's one last piece we were going to talk about, at least in this episode, for things you can do once you get beyond the box set. And it really becomes kind of a problem as you start buying metal aircraft or some of the larger bombers, and you find out that the regular flight stands don't work so great with these heavier miniatures. And Warlord does make an adapter that makes the base 3 times as large, which gets even more frustrating in a furball. But it gives it some stability. But I think there's a lot of other techniques and things you ought to think about from day one to kind of make your bases future-proofed. Because once again, sure, you'll get more bases with whatever aircraft you buy, unless you go buy third-party airplanes, which we'll talk about in a future episode. But you might want to make your bases totally interchangeable. So a couple of techniques we've seen out there. A lot of people have gone out there and they've put washers on the back of their bases and they've epoxied them on, or some guys have just blue tacked them on so they can pop them off. And the primary reason they do that is because of the cardboard pilot skill disc that sits on there, that if you can't get a pen or a marker through the backside of the plastic disc, you really can't pop the cardboard disc off too easily without tearing it up. So that's one way of doing it. Brett, you had another idea for something you can do on the base to keep it weighted down?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking, I haven't tried it yet, but I suspect it may work. Some kind of metallic putty. I was thinking of JB Weld is I think it's actually an epoxy, but it's used for automotive repairs where you can put this 2-part material together and fix automotive leaks and stuff. I've used it in a beater old Jeep I had to fix a broken water pump or something, cracked water pump, things like that. That's what it's for, but it's pretty dense once it's set. So that might work. It's malleable. You kind of like working with green stuff, except this is green stuff that's designed to replace metal, fix broken metal. I bet it's got some heft to it. So it'd be worth trying.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know. Use it on a couple of your bases and see how it works out with some of the heavier aircraft out there, and see if it kind of compensates for the aircraft being a little bit off center and over their center of gravity. Something else I've seen out there,
since it's malleable too, it'd be that thing with the hole. I didn't really think about that, but if I drilled through it or poked through that before it's hardened, then that would be a no-brainer too, because you'd have a hole right there
and be able to pop the disc off. Yep. Yeah, that would probably work really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a couple different ways that I've seen guys do it. They also have a little bit of markers on there that are these turning point markers that they don't even have to flip the aircraft forward for disadvantage or back for advantaged. They just turn the little marker that's actually sitting on the center part of the stand. I've seen some guys do that because really they don't care whether the airplane's pointing nose up or nose down. They just want to know whether he's advantaged, neutral, or disadvantaged. And so that's another way to solve kind of the same problem and keep all your aircraft on the same playing level. But be able to mark their actual advantage status out there, which is pretty cool to me, because then you don't end up looking out at a battery of aircraft, whole squadron of aircraft out there that are all nose down because they're disadvantaged, as the ME-110s looked like when I was flying them. But it's one of those things. Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. There's a lot of things that we've thought about, and I'm sure each of you also have some add-ons and other things that we're going to talk about in later episodes for other aircraft types, other model types that you might want to add as you're going out there and gaming. And we'll cover that here in another week or so. But is there anything else on the acrylics, on storing the miniatures, anything else that you want to add, starting with Brett?
Think of anything that I'm really curious about that measuring tool that Chris was talking about. I want to see that because like you guys, I was, frustrated at times when I was knocking over people's models with my ruler trying to move things around. So I'm intrigued about that piece.
I've been actually thinking about writing the Litgo guys and saying, hey, because they will do custom work, and just saying, hey, this is what some other people are doing. How about we do something that's exactly the way we want it, and giving them a design, and maybe they'll just cut it for the community.
And you hit the nail on the head there, because the Litco guys seem really responsive to coming up with new things. I haven't contacted them personally, but I think that's something that maybe the Blood Red Skies community needs to do, is go out there and say, can we get some slightly more customized tools that do the same thing but are easier in these larger multi-plane battles? Because once again, when we're out there with 14 aircraft on the table, sometimes it does get a little tight around fight center, as everyone's swirling around trying to get in a tailing position on everyone else.
Yep, that would definitely be an improvement.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about it tonight, and appreciate you guys also, having the time to engage with the community out there on Facebook. So if you have not gone to our Facebook page for Lead Pursuit Podcast, go check us out, see some of the images. You can see Chris and Brett's beautiful airplanes, and you can laugh at my ugly ones. But that's okay. I don't mind the abuse. I know I'm a terrible painter. You can also go check out a lot of the images on Instagram. I want to give a shout out to everybody who's already been out there liking the images, and especially saying good things about the podcast. So it's always nice to go out and read the comments on social media and realize people have found you out there when you didn't know you'd put that much information out. So I want to thank all the guys that have been doing that and getting the word out about the Blood Red Skies podcast for Lead Pursuit. The one thing I do want to talk about is the 700-pound gorilla in the room, and we'll have it on an upcoming episode, is MiG Alley is about to come out. So we're about a month away from the release of that. So hopefully we'll have some information here in the coming weeks about how the systems work, how it changes a little bit with bringing jets into Blood Red Skies. And more importantly, is it something you need to jump into immediately, or do you want to wait a while, let the rules develop, and decide if you're going to pitch in for ME-262s when they eventually come out, and add jets into your World War II gaming rather than jumping on forward into Korea? Personally, I'm already going in with both feet for Korea. Maybe put some P-51s out there as F-51s from the 1950s vintage, and see what can be done. But I think it's going to be a good system. Chris, what do you think?
So I think it's going to be really neat. I mean, for me as a Russian gamer too, it'll be neat to have the later pattern illusions out there with the MiGs. There's a lot of playability. I think there's a lot of crossover playability with some of the airplanes that existed, right at the end of the war, that transfer over into Korea. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing the jets. I mean, it's just neat that the jet era is coming to Blood Red Skies. So, and I do like the idea. There was a guy that did a custom ME-262 the other day, was asking, I think it was the Blood Red Skies Ready Room. He was asking, "Hey guys, what are the stats on this?" So, and everybody was giving him opinions on the stats, so he could play the model already. But I think this community is great, because you're going to see all kinds of awesome stuff like that, and I think MiG Alley is just going to make it even bigger. Yeah,
absolutely. Brett, I know you've kind of been volunteered into being our North Korean player, since we're getting rid of one of your factions, the Luftwaffe, by going to MiG Alley. But what are your thoughts on jumping in here soon?
I'm in 100%. Yep.
Just awesome. On the Luftwaffe thing too, I saw when Eric Hartmann was the head of the post-war Luftwaffe. His custom painted F-86 Saberjet with the German flag down the side, and it had the red tulip paint job on the nose of the F-86, and that would be just something badass to build for the game.
I think Galan
could flew in Korea, but I mean, it would be badass to play for the game.
Yeah, I saw a similar
alternate history. Play a little bit of alternate history with the the Cold War.
I think I saw an aircraft, an F-86 that Galan flew for the Luftwaffe. I think it was Galan. So anyway, there's stuff out there that might be fun to one off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, I already know that. Sure, I'm going to paint up some MiG-15s because you'll get a couple with the set. But at the end of the day, my F-86s are probably going to be from a variety of different air arms and air forces. And there might even be Taiwanese F-86s, but I'll leave that for another episode and talking about some rules, add-ons, and where the game goes after Korea. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate the time. It's always good to talk to you. And for the listeners out there, please feel free to drop us a line. Let us know what you think. Let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and most importantly, the rules that we have totally missed and gotten wrong. But we appreciate the feedback, and thanks for all the hard work.